Welcome into Sportsmemo's betting podcast for June 14th, Friday edition. We're talking Big Ten West football, college football that is, with Rob Veno. Rob, welcome into the podcast. How are you?
I am great today, Drew. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. Happy Flag Day out there in the United States of America. Rob is in, the Northeast, Rob, right? Right outside of Philadelphia?
Yeah, southeastern Pennsylvania, yep. Close to the Delaware border here.
Is that Big Ten territory?
It's definitely Penn State territory for sure. I think the whole state, until you get to Pittsburgh, is probably Penn State territory. So, yeah, we're loaded with it right here.
Okay. Well, good stuff. And guys, we've been breaking down a bunch of divisions here on the podcast. So next week we'll have Robbie on as well, breaking down likely the Big 12. Haven't decided yet. Let us know on Twitter which conferences we've actually had a couple guys reach out for the Big 12. That's why we're slating that next. But we like to hear from you what you're thinking college football wise, really anything wise. At Rob Veno Sports on Twitter, myself at Drew Martin Betts. Robbie, let's start off here. Big Ten West Division. We got the Illinois Illini, just 4-8 last year, 2-7 in conference. Looks like 5-7 against the number, so a small loser there ATS wise, and small trender towards the over at 7-5. But what are you thinking this year in Champaign, Robbie? Well,
they made big strides last year for sure on the offensive side, Drew. And again, a coordinator change, an offensive schematic shift. Rod Smith came in, took over the job, brought in Rich Rodriguez's, run-oriented spread offense, and Illinois took off. I mean, they were definitely a very, very strong running team. They were a very capable scoring team for sure. They averaged 244 rushing yards per game, and they scored points, like I say, in bushels last year for Illinois. So it was a big, big step up for them on the offensive side. The problem is the defensive side was as miserable as the offensive side was good, and maybe even more so, Drew, because this was your worst defense in Big Ten play last season. Could not stop anybody, either run or pass, so there's a lot to work on here. Lovie Smith has been questioned by the fan base, by the media there. Does this Tampa 2 defense even work in college football? And, he's defiant to an extent. Lovie Smith believes that his defense can work here, and in fact, he's taken over the defensive coordinator reins this season. So you'll see Lovie Smith hands-on approach, head coach and defensive coordinator. The problem for Illinois is, first off, they need to learn to stop people. Secondly, they need to be able to throw the football, and their returning quarterback, MJ Rivers, left and entered the draft portal after spring practices. So in that instance, they're now into a quarterback battle. And the loss of Rivers, who performed pretty well last year when he was on the field, dual threat quarterback, which is required of this offense. Again, when I describe something as the Rich Rodriguez run-oriented spread, just basically, if you've been following college football the past couple of years, just think of Khalil Tate at Arizona. It requires a quarterback that is a dual threat, because there's a lot of designed running plays for the QB in this system. It's not one where the quarterback only runs when the play breaks down, but these are designed running plays for the QB. Rivers goes. Now, it sounds, at least to me, when I first read it, it sounded a little more brutal of a hit than maybe it is. My first reaction was, wow, losing MJ Rivers, that's going to hurt them offensively. But the fact of the matter is that he hadn't really won the quarterback battle during the spring, and that's why he entered the transfer portal. He saw the writing on the wall that maybe I won't be the number one starter. Guys now in line to be that person. It looks like it'll be redshirt freshman Matt Robinson, another smaller type dual threat quarterback, 6 foot, $180, very good running skills. So he looks like the incumbent, so to speak, the next guy up for Illinois at quarterback. Although everything you read, Drew, would tell you that their true freshman Isaiah Williams is the more talented of the two. Just didn't have any practice time in the spring, won't get on campus until fall practice starts. So they've got two guys in place right now that fit the system, which is a big plus. like I say, they've got the really good running game going. Both of these guys need to throw the football, though. You can't pass for 149 yards per game in college football nowadays and expect to succeed unless you're, the Georgia Tech offense of Paul Johnson, unless you're Army, unless you're Navy, Air Force, one of those teams. So we'll see if they can kind of balance out the offense here. I think that would be a question. They do have 4 starters back on the offensive line, should help. It's a team that's on the rise. It's a team that still has problems. And what I would say to you, Drew, is that I think their biggest problem is that as they get better, so is the rest of this division. And the rest of this division might be getting better faster than Illinois is. So I don't know how much of a change there'll be in their record this season, especially straight up wise. Last year they go 4-8. We'll see if they can win more than 4. I'm not so sure that they can. They're a 5-7 point spread team, which is what we're worried about. There's obviously potential there to maybe get an extra point spread win, depending upon how they're lined. Maybe a couple. Totals wise, they were 7-5 last year. That would be the direction I'd look. I still don't believe that they can make the huge strides that are necessary on defense in just 1 year. And the offense seems to be really clicking in. Second year of the system, I think it'll be better. So maybe, we look towards this as an over team. Like I say, 7-5 to the over last year. Schedule-wise, all of these Big Ten teams, as we talked about last week in the Eastern Division breakdown, they play 9 conference games and only 3 non-conferences, and all 3 non-conferences here for Illinois are favorable. Akron at home, Eastern Michigan at home, and UConn, the worst defense in college football history last year, on the road. So they can get off to a real fast start before they wind up, getting into conference play with the home date against Nebraska being their first matchup.
Robbie, great breakdown on Illinois to start us off here in the West Division of the Big Ten. We got Iowa up next, moving from Champaign to Iowa City here. The Hawkeyes went 9-4 straight up last year, just 5-4 in conference, 8-5 against the number for the full season, and a heavy over team. Surprising here for Iowa last year, 9-4. Trending towards the over last year, Robbie. It's going to be interesting this year where odds makers price these totals for the Hawkeyes. What are you thinking overall betting-wise for Iowa?
Yeah, and that's what happens if you get any bit of an increase in offense from Iowa. You wind up with a bunch of overs because their totals are still totals like we would see 10 years ago. I mean, Illinois, just going down their list from last year, 46.5, 46.5, 43.5, 44, 41. The highest game total they had last year was a game against Illinois where they finally touched 60. But other than that, they played 12 games, and all 12 games had a closing total of 52 or less, which is extremely low. And when you get an NFL caliber quarterback in there, like Nate Stanley, who comes back, returns to the team this year, and you get 2 first-round NFL tight ends on the same team, which Iowa had last season, and those 2 guys have now graduated to the NFL. That's what you wind up with. You wind up with a little bit more potent offense. It's funny, too, Drew, because this team is always predicated on being able to run the ball. Tough offensive line. Like Wisconsin, you can always be guaranteed that Iowa's going to have a tough offensive line, and they're going to be able to run the football. And last year, they couldn't run the football. Last year, they only averaged 4 yards a game rushing the football 3 times in 13 contests. So that's not Iowa football. It was kind of reversed offensively last year. It did cause the overs. I think they'd love to get that balance back. The problem is it looks like the run game might come back, but the passing game lost so much production. Not only the 2 tight ends, TJ Hawkinson and Noah Fant, off to the NFL, but they also lose their leading receptions guy the last 2 years, Nick Easley, top slot receiver. So you're talking about, I think it was when I ran the number, 62% of their passing yardage was eaten up by the draft this year or graduation. So it's hard to replace when you have talents like that. Stanley could be, you could argue, you could probably end up in an argument against Adrian Martinez of Nebraska, but you could argue that Stanley is the best quarterback in this division. Certainly he's the best pro-style quarterback. And we'll see if he can get some guys in there this year. Iowa, of course, optimistic that they have the pieces on offense to fill in for what they lost. They seem to have a little bit more speed on the outside, which is not a characteristic of Iowa Hawkeye football, or hasn't been in the past. But these are changing times, and Kirk Ferentz recruiting a little more speed. It took about 2 years for Brian Ferentz's offense to kick in. I think when we go through schedule analysis, Drew, I think this is one team that I looked at and said to myself, this is the weirdest schedule I think I've seen. And you could argue, because of the way the Big Ten is set up, in two divisions, division winners play for the Big Ten title. So Iowa doesn't play a division game until October 19th. Their first 6 games, or 50% of their schedule, is against non-division teams. Their last 6 games are all against divisional teams. So you could pretty much argue that it really doesn't matter what Iowa does the first 6 games of the year. Their season, to an extent, doesn't start until October 19th. In their last 6 games, those will be the most important. Those are the ones that are going to decide whether or not they make it to the Big Ten championship game. If you were considering Iowa to be a college football Final Four squad, then certainly the first 6 would matter. But when you go through those first 6, you could see Iowa being 3-3. That's probably the way odds makers will see it. They're likely to be favored in 3, underdog in 3, and then their big 6 games start. So I haven't seen a team in college football that's in a division type setup like the Big Ten is, that had all their division games on the back half of the schedule. Purdue, Northwestern, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Illinois, and Nebraska. It's a tough haul. There's a bye week after 2 games in there to help Iowa out. But like I said earlier, you could argue that Iowa's season doesn't even start until October 19th.
Yeah, that is a weird scheduling quirk there that all their division games are at the end. Nice find there, Robbie. We got Minnesota up next, but guys, want to remind you of today's coupon code. We're only 70 days out from when we're recording right now. It's Flag Day, June 14th, and we're only... I guess we got 90-day all access at sportsmemo.com, and we're doing $375 off. That's 50% using the coupon code 90day at checkout for Rob Veno, myself, Drew Martin's 90-day all access package. It will get you the first 3 weeks of the college football season, plus all of MLB, any CFL, anything like that, NFL preseason, every play either of us release for half off using the coupon code 90day at checkout for 90-day all access with Rob Veno or myself, Drew Martin. Only 70 days out, Robbie, from college football season. We can feel it coming. We got the Minnesota Golden Gophers up next, 7-6 last year. Looks like 3-6 in conference, against the number 8-5 in a small trender towards the under. There, talking about the Minnesota Golden Gophers. We got PJ Fleck in his 3rd year, Robbie, 2nd year. He's an energetic guy, to say the least. Should be a good recruiter, but will it turn into wins on the field this year? What are you thinking for Minnesota?
Well, I think I liked them coming into last year, and I think I like them even more this year, Drew, because the progress that was made on the defensive side of the football at the end of the season. You touched on the fact that they trended toward the under with their overall record of 6 overs, 7 unders in 13 games last year, but the last 4 all went under, so they were 6-3 over until that point in the season. And that's the point where Minnesota made themselves a defensive coordinator change. PJ Fleck had been tied to defensive coordinator Rob Smith for a long time, but he had to let him go. The team was allowing 423 yards a game through their first 8. He elevated linebacker coach Joe Rossi to the defensive coordinator spot, and it's just unbelievable the transformation that took place. I mean, you watch those last 4 games last year, and you think the first one's a fluke, the second one's a fluke, the third one's a fluke, and then you figure out none of them were a fluke. They took that 423 total yards per game allowed all the way down to 300 in their last 4 games, and not because they played offensive lightweights. They played Purdue, and for those who remember that 41-10 thrashing of Purdue, That Purdue offense, which was fantastic last year, couldn't get anything going in that game. They then played Northwestern. They then played Minnesota, which I just mentioned. Had a very good offensive. They didn't play Minnesota. They played Wisconsin, who had a great running game. They stymied them. And then they played Georgia Tech in the bowl game and absolutely destroyed them. So for the Minnesota Golden Gophers, it's 4 consecutive really strong defensive efforts. That carries over. You read their spring quotes this year and you take a look at the spring game and what went on there. The defense is on the rise here under Joe Rossi. And it wasn't a system overhaul, Drew. It was just, I guess, a different voice and a couple of subtle changes on the defensive side that inspired Minnesota. They were, in defense of Rob Smith, they were a banged-up defensive football team for a lot of the beginning of the season. In fact, throughout the season. But somehow, some way, Rossi found a way to put it together, and I think that's going to carry over here. The offensive side is probably the most exciting for this team because you can argue that they have the best stable of running backs inside this division. And they got crippled with injuries last year. I mean, Rodney Smith, returning starter, right out of the chute looks tremendous and then gets hurt in the second game of the season. Shannon Brooks, the other returning starter, was already hurt. He comes back in week 6, looks fantastic in week 6. Week 7, he gets hurt. So their top 2 guys gone 7 games into the season. But Muhammad Ibrahim stepped in. Stepped in, and for those who watched again those last few games, he was an absolute beast running the football. They've got a real pleasant problem on their hands where the running game is concerned, in the fact that they have 4 guys returning, and the least of which, the number 4 back in the backfield right now, would probably be Bryce Williams, who gained 500 yards rushing the football last year. So Brooks is nursing a little bit of an injury, but by fall these guys should all be healthy. Fantastic running game, and I love the receivers. Their receivers last year, they put a couple of new guys in, pair of 6'2" frames. All of a sudden Minnesota could throw the ball. The quarterback tandem returns with Zach Annexstad. Remember, kind of a walk-on.
Yeah,
he did the job till he got
County in Florida.
Right, and he gets hurt, and Tanner Morgan takes over and takes the ball from there. Now, spring notes coming out of there, it looks like Annexstad could maybe have a leg up to get his job back. But the bottom line here is either one of these guys is going to be a real good quarterback for this team, and they have a 4-star recruit in waiting by the name of Jacob Clark, a true freshman, that the fans would like to see as the starting quarterback. They always want that highly touted recruit freshman to step in. But they're in good shape, Drew, on the offensive side of the football. And if Rossi's defense carries over what they did last year, it doesn't have to be holding people to 300 yards a game. But if it's in that vicinity, between 3 and 350, this is going to be a dangerous team. Both sides of the football. They're non-conference to start the season. South Dakota State, Fresno State, Georgia Southern. All 3 winnable for Minnesota. And then off into conference play. The crossovers for them, when you look at who they'll play from the East, Rutgers, Maryland at home, and then Penn State at home. So their crossover schedule is pretty favorable as well. This division is so competitive that probably the last 2 weeks of the season are going to decide who ends up winning this thing. But you could count Minnesota in that group that I think it could be right there. It's just a matter of which one of these teams stays healthiest, I would say, this season, because barring injury, it looks like it's going to be a heck of a race here in the western side of the Big Ten.
Yeah, the kid Anna said he threw a good deep ball, nice looking ball. I'd be surprised if he didn't win the quarterback kind of battle here. Usually those type of guys that have nice looking passes, for whatever reason, out of camp they win. Now their job might get overtaken throughout the season. Andy's a pretty good quarterback, but I agree with you, Robbie. I think Minnesota's kind of a bet on here in the early season, in the mix to win the West. I wouldn't be surprised if you saw them in the Big Ten championship game here. I'm not saying they're the front runner to win the division, but they'll be in the mix, in my opinion. And guys, we're moving down ABC order here. So next team up, we got the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Scott Frost's group, 4-8 last year, 3-6 in conference. ATS 6-5-1, of course, depending on what numbers you were betting throughout the season, but right about even in terms of making money or losing money for their backers. And 7-5, small trender towards the over. They had quarterback issues last year, Robbie, injuries, lack of talent, lack of depth. Just being able to throw the football. But Nebraska overall, Robbie, what are you thinking this year for Nebraska?
Yeah, they're right in that group, Drew, which in this division, I tell you what, you could, if you throw out Illinois, you could put the other 6 in and throw them in a blender. And for future bettors out there, people trying to maybe bet on the winner of the Big Ten Conference or the Big Ten West Division, on this side, I don't know that there's a bad bet as long as you leave Illinois out of it. I don't think they can win it. But Nebraska's one of the teams that can, because they may have the best quarterback in the whole division. Adrian Martinez came in as a freshman last year, very highly touted, perfectly suited for Scott Frost's offense, gets hurt right away, but does play 11 games last year and put up some pretty nice numbers. And the offense, as the season went on, got better. What I went back and checked, Drew, after looking at Nebraska coming into this season in preparation for this show, what I did was I went back and took a look, tried to trace the UCF roots, because I remember when he took over UCF, they were an 0-13 team, and he stepped in. Their first year, they go 6-7, and they go 8-5 against the spread. And I remember that first season because the second game, and it's funny that he lands in the Big Ten now, but that second game that year, they had gotten beaten by Michigan in a non-conference game, 51-14. And the quotes from Scott Frost after that game were, at the time, to me, hysterical, because Scott Frost was adamant, using phrases like, we kicked their ass physically, we were the more dominant team, and he got beat by 37. But Florida went on that season, like I say, to post an 8-5 ATS record. 6-7 straight up, 8-5 ATS, and they were competitive in all those games. You could see that they were going to be the next team to take over the AAC, which they did the following year and the year after. So I looked at Nebraska's season. Well, they're 4-8 last year, which isn't quite 6-7, but the Big Ten's a tougher conference than the AAC is, for sure, on a week-by-week basis. And they're 7-5 against the spread with a 4-8 record, so they were undervalued. They made progress, much like Central Florida did, as the season went on. And here we go into week 2. Now, into season 2. I don't expect season 2 to be 13-0 like it was down in Orlando, Florida. But I could see Nebraska, the way he's recruited. Both systems are in now. This offense is run by the right guy. He's got to get the defense to be a little bit tougher. I think, as we just talked about Minnesota, they showed that they made strides on the defensive side. Nebraska, to me, has yet to show that they've made any strides on the defensive side. But if I just use Central Florida as a gauge, the way he came in and gave that program the hint of physicality that they were missing before he got there, maybe it happens for Nebraska this year. Now, to say that they're going to become the black shirts defense again is probably overstepping the bounds, but there'll be improvement for sure under Frost. He's proven to be a good coach. And the one thing that helps him out is the fact that he runs that tempo offense. The 5 years where he was either a coordinator or the head coach at Central Florida before he stepped on the field for Nebraska, his teams were averaging 78 plays per game. Fast. He was the offensive coordinator at Oregon before Central Florida, so just remember back to Mariota's teams and how quick they went. And last year, they were down a little bit, partially because the offense, it takes a little bit to learn the playbook. They only ran 72 plays a game. I think that's going to pick up again. They're likely to go quicker. They're likely to gain yardage in bulk this year more than they did last year. So if things are picking up for them, they're like every other team we're going to talk about during this podcast, Drew, which is probably better than they were last year and in the mix to win the division. It's going to, like I said earlier, probably come down to the last 2 games of the season for all these teams. But in particular, it'll probably come down to which one of these teams can play the best defense, because that team has usually been Wisconsin, and it hasn't been close. It's either Wisconsin or Iowa. If Nebraska, Minnesota, Purdue, any of these teams can find a way to play that type of defense, and I should throw Northwestern and Pat Fitzgerald into that defensive mix. If these three up-and-comers can hunt down the three more stable programs in this division, then we're going to have some race to the finish here. But point spread wise, I would think Nebraska 7-5 might get a little bit better this year. They did at Central Florida. And I would think that totals wise, they're going to score a lot more than they did last year. This is a team that only averaged 30 points per game. And a lot of that was due to the end of the season, starting with a 53-point outburst against the Golden Gophers. They're probably going to be a better over team this year.
So totals wise, looking at the over, I just flew down to Costa Rica today, Robbie, and was talking to a sportsbook director here, and Nebraska came up as far as their season win total, just because of Scott Frost, the what he was able to do at UCF, like you just brought up. That's obviously common knowledge. Everybody knows that, how he was able to go 0-12, 6-7, then 13-0. It was a heck of a turnaround, no doubt about it. But my argument was, it's not really apples to apples, because that 0-12, it was like an artificially low floor. That was the best 0-12 team, of my lifetime. They just had huge quarterback injuries, and then Scott Frost got the job the year after. So I think he kind of got a little bit more of a bounce than he really should have at that job. Not that he shouldn't have got the Nebraska job. I mean, we all remember what he was able to do there. I think it's going to be interesting if he's going to be able to recruit as well as some think he is to Nebraska. But overall, what would you put their season win total at this year?
If we just go through the schedule and predetermine whether they would be favorite or underdog and just chart wins and losses that way, which is usually how these numbers are posted by odds makers. But South Alabama, you give them a win. Colorado on the road is a very difficult game. If I give them a loss there, Northern Illinois at home, they should win. Illinois, they should win. So that's 3. Ohio State at home, probably lose. Northwestern at home could be a winnable game. Let's give them 4. Minnesota on the road. Just leave them at 4-5 if they beat Indiana. Go to Purdue. Come home to Wisconsin. I guess to be logical, Drew, you should probably place Nebraska at either 6.5 or 7, depending upon if you want to go 6.5 with a higher juice or 7 with a lower juice. But that's probably where I don't know where they're placed because I'm not looking at it right now, but I would guess that that's where they should be. And then you have to make the determination, which you have to do with all these teams in the West. These 6 teams, are they going to be able to exceed expectations, or are they going to fall below expectations? And that just becomes a personal judgment call.
Yeah, no, good breakdown there, Robbie, on the Nebraska Cornhuskers. And guys, we got 3 teams left. Another N team here, Northwestern, 9-5, the winners of the West Division last year, got to the Big Ten championship game, shown in their conference record, went 8-2, counting the loss in the Big Ten championship game, 7-5 against the number, and 7-7 straight in terms of their totals. 7 overs, 7 unders. Robbie, what are you thinking for the Wildcats this year?
Well, how great is it that a team like Northwestern could end up with a 5-star recruit as their starting quarterback this year?
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
They've never had that. I mean, they've just never, ever had it. Clayton Thorson, and let's face it, he got drafted, right? But Clayton Thorson was kind of put together with duct tape and a couple of paper clips, always hurt, made the most of his abilities, but in no way, shape, or form is he Hunter Johnson, who's going to be the quarterback of Northwestern this year. Now, Pat Fitzgerald, of course, this is as traditional, as straight-faced, as old-school a head coach as you're going to find. And in typical Pat Fitzgerald fashion, he won't give the job to Hunter Johnson yet. Now, this battle will continue into the summer. I'd be extremely surprised, in fact, shocked beyond belief if Hunter Johnson isn't out there taking snaps week 1. But to get a 5-star recruit at quarterback is huge because they have receivers at Northwestern and may be, Drew, as good a group. I mean, they've had some individuals there, but to have the 3 or 4 guys that they have that are going to be catching balls this year, and with the speed that a couple of these guys have, and Northwestern is in a different atmosphere as far as the passing offense is concerned right now. They should be as good as they've been. This is a team that's played with tempo, that's leaned on the pass, play calling percentage wise. A few of the past, and I don't know, maybe about 3 of the past 4 seasons, they haven't been able to run the ball successfully just from pro sets and whatnot. So when they did go to the up tempo, when they did go to the spread a while back, it was pretty successful for them. Should be even more successful here. What they have to worry about is they brought in a new offensive line coach, and they implemented a whole new blocking scheme for their offensive line. They're going to go a little bit more zone blocking here, maybe to open up some holes for their running game. And in part, I think better protection schemes to help keep Hunter Johnson on his feet, because Clayton Thorson was a guy who got hit a lot. And Northwestern only brings back 2 starters on the offensive line. Now, you could say that's a bad number, only 2 out of 5. On the other hand, you could say that, since we're implementing a brand new blocking scheme, then the 3 guys who didn't start last year really weren't that attached to the system and can get accustomed to this one pretty quickly. I think these Northwestern kids, from what I read through spring practices, are going to be pretty adaptable to the new blocking scheme, which should really, really help here. Pat Fitzgerald always finds a way to put a good defense on the field. Last year was no exception. And it's really funny with them, Drew. I don't know if I'm trying to think off the top of my head, but I think it's the last 3 years in a row where they have opened up the season with back-to-back losses. Last year it was losing 3 of their first 4. They did win their first game, but I think the 2 previous seasons they had lost 2 in a row, or maybe even 3 in a row. And they were written off after 3 weeks in the season the past 3 years, and their second halves, or their back halves of their seasons, have been tremendous. Somehow, as down as they've been through the first third, straight up record-wise, and bowl possibilities looking bleak, Pat Fitzgerald has been able to rally the troops 3 years in a row and get them into bowl games. And last year's case, like you said, get them into the Big Ten championship game where they were just overmatched by Ohio State. That game, I think, got close in the third quarter, and then Ohio State just took off and ran away with it. But they beat a really good Utah team in the bowl game, 31-20. I mean, this is as solid a football team as there's. They've got some NFL players on the defensive side of the football too, so they're going to be good there. Again, I'll repeat myself for like the 4th time, but there's 6 teams in this division where you could make an argument for them to win this thing, and I couldn't fault you. You can make a legitimate argument for a lot of these teams, Northwestern being one of them. I happen to like them this year. I think they're always underrated because they're considered to be boring, traditional and boring. And I think the offense is going to be anything but. It's not even the right tag to put on them, Drew, but I think they just have that public perception that, it's Northwestern. You know what I mean? 20 points a game, good as an underdog, can't really score. They'll keep things close, and we can only bet them when they're an underdog. But I think things are about to change with this team. Pretty explosive with Hunter Johnson at quarterback and the guys that they have on the offensive side. I look for them. I'm just gazing through last year's closing totals as I talk to you here. We rattled off the Iowa numbers and how low Iowa totals were, and that led to a good over-under mark last year. Last year, this team goes 6-8 over the total, so they played toward the under a little bit. But the closing totals, Drew, are just the same as Iowa's were. They're nothing. They're 47, 51, 46.5, 48.5. If odds makers continue to line them that way this year, until the public masses get to see Hunter Johnson play and perhaps the explosiveness that I'm projecting, and I could be dead wrong too, but I'm projecting that they'll be able to score points here. Until the public masses can see that, we can probably take a lot of value advantage with Northwestern up and over the total.
Robbie, we got the Purdue Boilermakers up next, 6-7 last year. Went 5-4 in Big Ten play, 7-6 against the number, 7-6 over under here. Boilermakers, West Lafayette, Indiana. under 500, did make a bowl game, but it will be interesting to see what happens in this next year of the new regime, Robbie.
Well, certainly they got the offense fixed, and I can chronicle the Jeff Brom tenure here at Purdue from an offensive standpoint, because I've said it before the past 2 years on this podcast, and I'll say that he's the most straightforward, truthful head coach that you'll find in this conference. He's one of a handful across the entire nation that when he says something, you just don't brush it off as coach speak. If he's telling you something, he means it. He started off the first year by telling anybody who would listen that his offense was not going to be anything near what he had going at Western Kentucky because these kids just didn't grasp it. And, you get that coaching hire, that splash hire, Jeff Brom from Western Kentucky. They score 50 points a game, and now Purdue's going to be able to score in the Big Ten 30 points a game. It didn't happen. The coach was right. For those who listened, Purdue couldn't play offense. He went into last year saying the same thing. He started the year by saying, if we don't learn how to make big plays because we can't move it in bits and pieces 75 yards down the field against these defenses that we face, we have to learn to get big plays so we can score more touchdowns. Otherwise, we're not going to win games. First 2 games of the season, he's exactly right. Against Northwestern, they make a big comeback in the second half, but they lose 31-27. Then they come back against Eastern Michigan and score 19 points. The offense fails miserably. They lose the game straight up. Then they took on Missouri as a big dog, and that's when the big plays started to happen. And you can thank Rondale Moore, number 4 for Purdue, the running back, slot receiver, whatever you want to call him, because he does it all, kick returner. He's the guy that started making explosive plays, and Purdue from that point on, for the most part, couldn't be stopped offensively. So this offense with Rondale Moore back, he was a freshman last year. Now you got him back as a sophomore. Elijah Sindelar will be the guy to take over at quarterback here. Remember, they had a real quarterback mess on their hands heading into last season. I mean, they had returnees with experience, but they just couldn't get either one of their quarterbacks to stay away from turnovers. Finally, David Blau got the message, or something clicked for him, and he threw for a ton of yards last year. He leaves. Sindelar, the guy who was spot starting with him for a couple of years, gets the nod here. I think he was injured at the end of spring practice, but they held him out for precautionary reasons. Should be ready to go. And since then, Brom has been able to recruit, so I think the quarterback position will be okay for Purdue. Team that can move the football, like we've said about Minnesota, like we've said about Northwestern, like we've said about Nebraska, like we've said about Illinois, up and down this conference, this division. The question for Purdue one more time is going to be the defense. I mean, last year's defense was not scintillating by any stretch of the imagination. Overall, they give up 431 yards per game. You play a good schedule when you're in the Big 12 in the Big 10. Their non-conference included Boston College and Missouri. And remember, Boston College with A.J. Dillon last year was a pretty good offense. So they played some good non-conference offenses. But inside conference play, their defense still got lit up. They've got to make strides there. According to what I've read from the defensive coordinator here from Brom, Nick Holt being the defensive coordinator who came with him from Western Kentucky, they like what they have. The defense has progressed. It does take some time. Purdue, under the last regime, when Brom took over, was a bottom-of-the-barrel defensive squad, and they just didn't have enough depth and enough speed and a lot of other things. And now they sort of got the pieces in there. So we'll see. I mean, once again, whichever one of these teams can play the best defense probably ends up being and stay injury-free, or at least elude injuries better than the others, is probably going to be your division winner. Purdue's in that mix. Their schedule, as far as the conference games are concerned, allow them to get Minnesota at home, or the division games, that allows them to get Minnesota at home. It allows them to get Nebraska at home. But they have to go on the road and play in some tough places inside the division, Drew. They got to go to Iowa, which is tough. They've got to go to Northwestern, which is tough. and they've got to go to Wisconsin, which is tough. So they certainly don't have the better end of it schedule-wise. In the non-conference, they're probably going to face as good a non-conference overall as anybody else in their division. They get Nevada, Vanderbilt, and TCU, 2 of those 3 at home. So we'll see. Again, an improved team, need to play better defense, and the schedule maker doesn't do them any favors this year. We'll see how it goes.
Robbie, great stuff there. And guys, just looking at Bet Online right now, we were talking Nebraska's over-under wins. They're at 8 right now. And the next team up, we got Wisconsin. Bet Online has them at 8.5. So there's not really season win totals on all the teams out right now. You know, Chris Andrews has led the market the last couple of years, but he's had some health difficulties this offseason. So we'll see what happens with that market. But there really isn't, season win totals on all 130 college football teams, just kind of the big boys, maybe the top 25, top 30 or so college football teams. But we'll talk the last one here in alphabetical order in the West Division for the Big Ten. To close out the Big Ten, Robbie, we got Wisconsin, the Badgers, 8-5 last year, 5-4, disappointing in conference against the number, just 4-9, a money burner here in the Big Ten, 6-7, trending towards the under. The Badgers were, Robbie, and we got to ask you, man, how much jumping around is going to be going on in Camp Randall this year?
Yeah, it's last season was kind of a unfortunate season for Wisconsin, Drew, in the fact that their linebacking core was shredded by injury, and they were not the defense that they've been in the past. Although overall numbers will show you 334 yards per game is, for college football nowadays, that's a good number, only allowing 334, but it's not Wisconsin football. And their defense was hit by a few teams last season. They had to find a way around these injuries. Give the coaching staff credit for the most part. Paul Christ, defensive coordinator Jim Leonard, who probably is the best defensive coordinator inside this division in his 3rd season now. Just a tremendous DC. They did a heck of a job to hold teams to that 13-game average of 334, and then they come up in the bowl game and absolutely destroy Miami of Florida for, I think it was 2 years in a row now. They played Miami and beat their brains in bowl games. So Wisconsin loses their starting quarterback, Alex Hornibrook. We talked about this when we did the AAC. For whatever reason, he transferred out and wound up in Florida State. I think he's at Florida State, which was kind of a questionable decision in my mind on his part. He doesn't fit that system, right, that's going on down there, but we'll see how he does. And he left because he saw the writing on the wall. Head coach Paul Christ basically had anointed Jack Cohn his backup last year, and the kid who played 5 games when Hornibrook was hurt, he was going to be the starting quarterback here. They weren't making any guarantees to Alex Hornibrook. They wanted to move on from that and see what they could do. Jack Cohn did not set the world on fire. I remember him having one really good game, but the other 4 very mediocre at best. And they have a stud freshman by the name of Graham Mertz, who may even take over Jack Cohn during this season. The one thing that Wisconsin has that you can mark down in stone every single year is they're going to have a great running game, and Jonathan Taylor is the best running back in this division as far as starters are concerned. I don't know that they have as good a group as Minnesota does, but certainly Jonathan Taylor, from pure running back standpoint, going to be NFL bound after this year. So they're going to be able to run the football. Can they throw it? Last year they really couldn't. You take a look at their numbers, 161 passing yards per game. And again, just like Illinois, when you can stack the box against these teams in big time games, and they can't throw against you, it's very difficult for a team like Wisconsin, for a team like Illinois, to even harder for Illinois because they're less talented, but it's hard for Wisconsin to win these games if they don't have any threat of throwing the football whatsoever. Receiving core was banged up last year. I think if injuries even out for Wisconsin this year, there'll be a far better offensive team and there'll be a far better defensive team. I don't like Jack Cohn particularly as your starting quarterback here. I think there's 4 or 5 other guys in this division that are better, so they're going to have to overcome the erratic quarterback play. I didn't read any raving reviews about Cone coming out of spring practice. And in fact, like I just said, there's a possibility that true freshman Graham Mertz could take his place here during the season. It's not going to be right off the bat. Cone's going to be your starter. But I do worry about that a little bit with this team, Drew. Hornibrook was very up and down the past 3 years, and I don't think you've made any strides naming Cone the starter. To change that. Good 1 week, bad the next two, good 1 week, bad the next two. That's why I think that this is a 6-team toss-up. If all things were equal, you would probably put Wisconsin atop the division and have the other 5 fighting for second place. But these other teams have caught up to Wisconsin a little bit. Again, injury had a lot to do with Wisconsin's little nosedive last year, the reason why Northwestern found their way into the Big Ten championship. They're going to be back, but I don't know that they're at the plane of one and the rest are, clear-cut number twos in this division like they used to be. It's going to be interesting to see. I don't know what the win total is. What did you say it was with Wisconsin? Did you rattle that one off?
Yeah, 8.5.
8.5 goes to show you kind of right there, right? That even the odds makers don't trust Wisconsin the way they used to. And I think the other part of that equation is the division is just really clogged up right now with teams that are almost equal to each other. It's going to be a real interesting division, Drew. I don't know right now, out of all the teams we've talked about today, I think I've got less of an opinion on how to play Wisconsin from a side perspective, from a totals perspective, than any of these other teams. I think I've got a good idea how I'm going to judge these other teams. But Wisconsin, to me, that one's up in the air. I think I'll have to watch and see a couple of games out of this team before I go ahead and make a decision on them. They open up with South Florida on the road, and, that could be difficult. That could very well be difficult in the heat against an up-tempo offense. You could see Wisconsin having their hands full with South Florida. Then they come back with Central Michigan, get a bye week, and then they have to get right into Big Ten play with Michigan. It's at home in Camp Randall, but boy, that's a tough team to start the season with. So no easy road for Wisconsin this year, buddy. If nothing else, right now, maybe I'd even look to fade Wisconsin a little bit at this point. But the fact that the odds makers have the future lined at 8.5 kind of tells me that you're not really going to get any value playing against Wisconsin because they've been downgraded for sure by odds makers.
Yeah, this is a solid division, Robbie, and I think both you and I agree. Probably Illinois, coming in the rear, but outside of that, 1 through 6, a lot can go on. There could be a lot of moving and shaking here. I could see Minnesota pushing for the championship. I could see Iowa doing it, Northwestern, Wisconsin, a blue blood, so to speak, from this side of the conference. Robbie, great breakdown. Big Ten is all posted. Use the podcast tab to go back and listen to any segment here of college football. Guys, don't forget the coupon code when you're checking out. We got 90-day all access for Rob Veno or myself, Drew Martin, for half off. That's 50% off the 90-day all access. Will get you all the way through week 3 of the college football season, plus any plays we release in any sport in between now and then. The coupon code is 90DAY at checkout. That's 90DAY at checkout. For Rob Veno, I am Drew Martin. Guys, have a fun, safe weekend. Best of luck with your bets, and we'll talk on Monday.